Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. You know, you talk about retconning, right? Like, Lucky. Lucky was never the Luke 2.0, always on the go, always has to sit there and go somewhere, You never stay in one place too long. That was never Lucky. But retcons can be a hell of a thing, right? I've heard that they've retconned some of Sonny's stuff as far as Karen is concerned. But I got to do a little more of a deep dive about that. Lulu, for an example, I don't remember Lulu ever being this. I mean, yes, she was stubborn, right? But on some level, she knew how to take accountability for some of the stuff that she did, right? At least when I started watching it, that's when Julia was there. You watch this conversation today. I don't know how the hell Dante ever fell in love with this woman. I don't know how you can be friends with this woman because this conversation that she has with Maxie has got to be among the most exhausting conversations. I'm just like, Maxie, how did you want to being best friends with this woman, right? Because everything that comes out of Lulu's mouth when Brooklyn's like, you understand, like, oh, I actually wrote something down. Like, for example, there's one point she's not there talking about Gio. She's like, listen, you what you wound up doing, all the memories that Gio had of his mother was just gone, just like that. And you also wind up defying a dying woman's wishes. And all she says was, "Well, that's not my fault." I mean, it was Lois and Gloria, it was Lois and Gloria that sat there and lied to him. I didn't do that. Brooklyn's the one that didn't sit there and say anything. Every time she's always just like, "Well, that's not my fault. Well, I didn't do that. I'm not the person that lied. But that's not my fault." And after a while, it's just like, what the f is wrong with her? Like, literally, you go back and you watch that. You see how many times she either says, "Well, it's not my fault," or, "Well, I didn't do that." And she practically, at one point, she was like, "Well, frankly, I never actually saw anything I did wrong." That's what she said. She was like, I don't really see it as me actually doing anything wrong." I'm like, what is wrong with you? This is my whole thing. It's like, and granted, I'm not gonna go one way or the other, but it just kind of makes me think. If this was anybody else other than Brooklyn, and she did something similar, would she still sitting like, "Oh well, I really do feel bad or whatever"? I can kind of see um if it wasn't Brooklyn, or it's just like that's just how she is. Like, you go back and you watch this conversation, you're just like, nothing's your fault. Everything worked out. You felt like you did the right thing. Somebody had to do it, and somebody had to be me. That's all she sits there and says throughout this entire goddamn conversation, and it's just so infuriating to sit there and watch. And again, it just makes me sit there and think: was she always like that? Was she always just like, "Oh well, I didn't do anything wrong, and everything kind of worked out," or "It's not my fault," and da 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 da. Like, there's no level of empathy. She says that she has empathy, but clearly, it's like, well, I did the right thing, and Brooklyn's the one that lied, so I don't really see how it's my fault. And then, of course, Brooklyn gets over there. And Brooklyn gets over there. Maxie calls Brooklyn over. And it turned out that she wants to sit there and try to ambush them, right? To try to get them to get some peace. Like, you have too many people that's been affected by this whole thing between you two. And most importantly, the kids are going to be affected. Rocco and Gio's going to be affected. And it's going to sit there and trickle down to them, maybe not having a good relationship. And then there's Dante that has to sit there and be watching baby mamas. I know some people are like, I ain't offended when people say that. Oh, then you can go. But essentially, like, this creates problems for Dante, and it is creating problems for Dante. It's affecting him at work. But there's one point where they both seem like, all right, listen, Max, got a point. Maybe we should kind of just, agree to a ceasefire, agree to peace for the kids. kid's sake. And the minute that Brooklyn says, okay, well, listen, you can apologize. I'll accept your apology. And she pretty much like, nope, I ain't doing anything wrong. I'm asking if they give me an apology, and I did exactly what I did pretty much. And it just goes right back into the conversation before when Brooklyn was sitting there practically saying that she's going to get revenge on Lulu. Probably suing her or whatever, because she didn't just get a lawyer just to get a lawyer, like, just to cover her bases on anything. She got a lawyer specifically, I'm assuming, maybe for something. Could be something else, but, Um, Then Marco and Alexis was talking about Natalia, her case, and just trying to help her out and everything, and making sure that Alexis don't have a problem with Natalia. And Natalia gets in there, and Natalia's like, "Yo, you didn't call me. You know what I'm saying? Like you just kind of wrote me off and everything." But they explain the situation to her, and she mullers out. And she tells them both what's going on. This isn't her first DUI. She can go to jail for 5 years, and she could potentially turn in Sonny with her, right? And at that point, Lex like, whoa, okay, yeah, I can't be involved. We're friends. We share a child. This isn't gonna work. So she leaves, and Marco is just kind of there for her at this point, saying there's a possibility that your life could be in danger. Now, after Sonny and Jason was there talking about Michael and Willow, and feeling bad for Willow, and Michael, still having a heart and not exactly enjoying watching her break down like that. Nobody did. Rick, I mean, even Carly, who don't like her, was like, she can empathize with her as a mother, be like, damn, that was hard. That was hard to watch. Oh, even Rick felt bad, and this wasn't just about losing. This was just watching that was just gut wrenching in a sense. Like there's a point where, and I'm talking a little bit about yesterday, but there's a point where the judge says what she says. She gives her reasons of why, and why she's getting her kids taken away. Then the gavel happens. She's like, "What happened?" Rick was like, we just lost. That's what happened. Where did you go for a minute?" And I mean, it was just that devastating for her. But anyway, they talk about that, and then they talk about Natalia, right? And Sonny's like, she's a problem for me. Talks about what she has, the financial records, as the FBI gets involved, and money not being clean like it should be clean. You going to jail for a very long time. So it's like she's being a problem, but at the same time, she's came through on him on a numerous amount of occasions, from the Ava stuff to, I think it was something else that she did as far as lying on the stand or whatever. But and even coming to him now, as opposed to be like, hey, listen, I'm just gonna sit there and just rat your ass out and just be good. What Unfortunately, what he doesn't know about that could change things is her talking to Sitwell about his health. You know, that's maybe that deal that he offered her, it may be reneged. Like, who knows? I'm hearing rumors. I'm not going to sit there and say what they are, because I'm not going to sit there and spread this one, because it could have came from one of those fake channels that just sit there and post stuff because they want to get they want to get views or clicks or whatever. But anyway, you talk about it, and what he's going to sit there and do with it. Now, Natalia at some point gets over there, and Sonny's like, "We need to make you disappear. You need to sit there and start a new life. Um, but I won't go to jail. You won't go to jail. I won't have to, you know, put your ass in the Pine Barrens. And I'm gonna look out for you. I'm gonna set you up. You're gonna be good." And at first she's like, oh, listen, I mean, I have to sit there and leave my kids. And yes, I know people can sit there and be like, well, it's not like she really has much to stay for. I mean, Allison don't F with her, Marco don't F with her, you know. Clearly ain't gonna be a thing, a romantic thing with Sonny and Natalia. So, like, in reality, it's like, got no reason to stay. Of course, things can also change, you know. We've seen that time and time again with characters and relationships between parent and their child, or parent and their adult child, or whatever, and how it changes. So it's not a never case. But you know, I just I don't know. Part of me looks at it and I can see what people are talking about when they're like, Natalia doesn't really have a use for staying on the show. Um, but sometimes I look at Leo from Days of Our Lives and I'm like, he don't exactly have a use for staying on the show besides the obvious. Um, and yet he's still there. So, but she does seem like she does agree. At one point, she's like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, if this is the price for me helping you out, it's like, well, I mean, the price could sit there and be two in the eye, or two between the eye. You want that outcome? And I suggest you not be a problem for some. Just saying. Um, there's a point where Alexis, after leaving her office, talks to Tracy. And long story short, Tracy wants for Alexis to sue for custody of Scout. And Alexis is like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to dishonor my daughter's last wishes. Now, one can sit there and look at it and be like, well, technically, Drew also dishonored Sam's last wishes by, uprooting Scout from the Quartermains, going to plan to move her to DC. And this way, you know, not just leaving Danny and Rocco, but also her grandmother and her two aunts. So, it's one of those things where it's like, given the stuff that Drew's doing, the type of person that he is, even when she sat there and said, Sam always felt like he was a good father, da 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 da. I was like, you wouldn't be so concerned if you didn't think that he was a good father. You sat there and said that Sam had faith in Drew's ability to be a good father, but if that was the case, you wouldn't be sitting there acting the way you're acting. So obviously you don't see him as being a good father. I'm kind of surprised that she didn't sit there and take Tracy up on that offer. But she does give Tracy some advice as far as don't let him pursue this whole ketamine thing. If he does, your ass could be grass. Just don't do it. She admits to, doing that to Alexis, but she's like, hey, listen, I didn't do that to Drew. Dante gets in the office, and he seemed like he's having a bit of issues with Chase. There's one point where Chase seemed like he has an attitude. It's like, is this going to be a problem? I'm like, Chase, you might want to kind of like settle down there a little bit. Because while I do understand the position that he was placed in, as far as not telling not telling his wife's secret, you can't sit there and begin an attitude with him like he don't have some sort of reason to be upset with you. Don't try to act like you're on a high moral ground with this. Like, is there going to be a problem? You goddamn right it's going to be a problem. He felt like you lied to him. You fucking right it's going to be a problem. But there's a point where they seem like Chase gets an assignment that Dante is not privy to and is excluded from. And Dante don't believe Chase, so he goes to Anna. And the way he's sitting there talking about Chase, Anna's like, all right, this is not going to be good because, you kind of got to leave your personal stuff personal behind. I understand why you're angry at him. She does sit there and say that I have empathy for Brooklyn because of her situation that she did with Robin. And she does at one point sit there and say, well, I understood why they lied. I'm like, Annie, you're not exactly being impartial by saying those things. But she is correct. Like, y'all need to kind of just chill out. Anyway, Dante leaves. He's like, okay, fine. I'm be civil. I'm gonna keep my work stuff. My work stuff. Gets outside. He starts talking to Chase. Under 5 minutes, and they're just getting into a heated argument. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's one point, right, where Dante starts to not make sense because I'm upset that Chase didn't sit there and tell me about what happened with Brooklyn. And Anna's like, okay, you understand that that's his wife, though, right? Like, he's not gonna sit there and betray his wife's confidence. Dante's like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I do get that. I understand that. But he could have encouraged her to sit there and tell me the truth. I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. You're upset about the lie, but you understood why he lied. And the only thing that you're mad about now is that you're mad that he didn't sit there and convince his wife to tell you the truth? Because I'm not going to lie, that seems pretty stupid to me. That seems hella dumb to me. You're upset that he couldn't convince his wife to essentially do the right goddamn thing. And that's somehow his fault? Bro, it almost sounds like you're finding reasons to sit there and stay mad at him. Like, seriously, that's a reason to try to stay mad at him. Not a reason to even, you know what I'm saying? Like, not even a reason that makes sense. Um, like, you are clearly just acting on pure emotions, but you know damn well that you're not making sense. Anyway, they're going back and forth. Anna breaks it up. Anna seems like she's going to sit there and put them both in the jail cell to sit there and kind of hash out their stuff. To kind of form some sort of peace. Which hopefully it works better than what Maxie tried to do because they are also getting Maxie in the middle of both of their shit. I feel like there's so much more, even though it's like 17 minutes in, and it still feels like there's. Hmm, oh, there is Drew and Marty. So Drew is coming up to Martin and be like, yo, can we do something? Can we sit there and refile? Can we sit there and do an appeal? Can we do something? And Martin's like, there's really nothing we can do. And also she does sit there and say something that everyone was sitting there saying, including me, when she was like, trying to use the fact that Michael abandoned his children while he went to a further and better place to sit there and get treatment was not a winning strategy at all. And the long story short is, this isn't Rick's fault. Rick could have done a better job than Martin at this point. And I consider Rick to be a better lawyer than Martin. I'm not saying Martin's a slouch. I'm just saying that I feel like Rick is a better lawyer. But in all reality, the deck is stacked against him. Right? There was key things that Willow did, and this is what Martin points out: crossing the state lines thing. Um, yes, that wasn't like Drew said. He didn't file kidnapping charges, but it doesn't look good in the eye of the law. It's about perception. And then there's the big one, the one that I had an issue with. Signing over rights to Drew without even considering Michael. Like, how out of pocket is that? You going to sit there and sign rights to, you know, another man's child? That same child that caused a wrecking ball in their marriage, and you honestly said yes to that? See, this is my whole thing, right? Like, people sat there and say, listen, if Drew gets your kids taken away, you got nobody to blame but yourself, right? And while Nina will sit there and blame Drew, I'm like, Willow is not exactly innocent that shit either. She knew what she was doing the whole goddamn time. Yeah, Drew didn't help the situation. We can clearly see that, but like, we're not going to sit there and act like Willow's not a full grown ass adult. Um, and yeah, I don't remember one time when she sat there and tried to facilitate any sort of interaction between the kids and Michael. Hell, it was Christina that did that. And remember, Willow was like, "Oh, I'm not going to do that because we're just not in a good place or whatever." And I'm like, If it was just, here's the thing, if it was just that, and I think that's the problem. It's the things that just added up. Like that by itself wouldn't have really did much. That on top of everything else, it ain't good, boo boo. It is not good. And you practically it's like, listen, they're not miracle workers. That's what it comes down to. They are not miracle workers. Um, so yeah, you got that going on. And long story short, they talk about perception, right? Like, oh, the town system thinks that, ever since I came into Willow's life, everything has went to hell or whatever, but he doesn't see it that way. But again, just because you don't see it that way doesn't mean that the rest of the town, and more importantly, the courts don't see it that way. So, he's like, he's going to have to leave Willow. This way, Willow can sit there and have some sort of relationship with her kids. Because Michael's like, listen, if this was anybody else, cool, whatever. But this is Drew that we're talking about. Somebody who I don't like, and who has just been doing very questionable things. And I don't feel like that's somebody you that he wants and their kids' life. See, that's again, that's the thing. When you date somebody who has kids, it's always going to be complicated. Because the minute that the other person doesn't like that person being in their kids' lives for whatever reason, no matter if it makes sense or if it's super petty, they have a right to how they feel. They can sit there and take that shit to the judge, and that can always be an issue. So, but he's like, listen, if I got to step back to do that, then I'll do that. He calls Jason up. He's like, Jason, I need you to sit there and make a proposal to Michael. You know what that proposal is going to be. Now, will Drew honor that? That will be the question. But he's going to sit there and put it out there. Right now, Willow was so out of it that she was in the hospital, and she's going to have a psych evaluation. I know people always sit there and say, "Oh, she's crazy, blah 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 blah, blah 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 blah." Okay, whatever. Um, right now she's going through it, but let's see if Drew is the man of his word. We'll sit there and just take a step back and let her get her shit together, because you know, like he says, he loves her. He loves her. He's going to do the right thing by doing the right thing, taking a step back and doing what's best for Willow. What's best for Willow is to have her kids in her life. And if that means that he has to do it, that's what it is. Now, I do feel like that's pretty much about it. It was a long 2 days. It was fun, but it was pretty long. And I wasn't too sure if I was going to have time to do a review. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do a review on Beyond the Gates. I'm going to try and see. But I might just make the time, because Beyond the Gates has just been. Anyway, everything should be going back. Schedule. Okay. So the regular live streams are going to be going back on schedule for Monday, because I practically is going to catch up, hopefully, with all of them today. And if not, then today and tomorrow. So for members, that would be good to sit there and do the member stream for Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday we'll be back to normal. So yeah, if I miss anything, write in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But I did sit there and watch yesterday's episode and the day before. It's amazing throughout everything. I still managed to keep up with all 5 of those soaps. It was a lot. But it was fun. It was emotional. Drama. So yeah, it was pretty much it was like a soap. Yeah, it was pretty much like a soap opera. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna go. And I will see you on the next stream. Regular streams will go back to Monday. Member streams, hopefully when I get done with everything, will be going back to tomorrow. I should be good.